Thank you for joining us on this session of grant management from the department perspective. And I'm going to turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for getting us all set up and for all the work you've been doing for this symposium. I'm going to introduce myself real quick and then turn it over to Lexi, who will start with the first couple slides. So my name is Bridget Hollingsworth, and I am a research project manager with the Global Food Research Program, which is housed within the Carolina Population Center here on campus. And Lexi, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Lexi Groner. I'm a research administrator at the Carolina Population Center. So I'm going to give you a little overview of what CPC is, because we are a center and not a department. So we are a population research center, which is just population is anything you can think of that could possibly be population. So we have faculty fellows from almost every department, at least 20 different departments and many of the different schools within our center. They get nominated by current fellows and then voted in. And so it's a good collaborative research setting. And I just have a little diagram here so that you have an idea of like where I fit and where Bridget fits in the center. So we're run by a director who oversees the deputy directors, and then the faculty fit in here as well. They're sort of under the director, sort of in line with the director. And I work under the research admin manager in proposals and grant management, and I do the life cycle of the awards. So I do proposals and grant management and a million other little things as needed as well. And then Bridget works directly with one of our faculty fellows in the Global Food Research Program, as she said, as a project manager. So we're kind of in different sections, but work alongside of each other.
And so we decided today to kind of focus on one particular project, one grant that takes up a majority of Lexi and my time and a lot of Lexi's time, and that we work on together and are communicating about all the time. And so this grant is a foundation awarded grant, and the foundation awarded UNC to be the research arm of a long-term plan to evaluate global food policies. We're currently in a 5-year time frame of a $30.5 million budget. This followed a 7-year, $25 million budget. Within the prime grant, there are 3 separate aims, and we are required by the sponsor to keep 3 separate budgets. The aims are somewhat similar, related to food policy, but are distinct and separate. And underneath those aims, we have 8 plus subcontracts or subawardees, and each of these subawardees are foreign universities, and they lead activities within these countries to evaluate food policies or food environments. Each of these subawardees activities are on different timelines. As I mentioned, we're evaluating food policy, and so as I'm sure you're aware, policies, regulations, and laws are not always on the same calendar from one state to another, much less one country to another. And so we sometimes have subawardee activities that are starting on a different schedule compared to others. So that can be a little bit of a constant challenge to get things aligned. As I mentioned, the aims are separate but related. And so the multiple PIs we have on this project and the staff, of which there are over 30 personnel, might be working on projects under multiple aims at once. And so that, requires balancing some of the efforts and being, conscious of those differences. One big, I would say, challenge or requirement to this grant is that we are required to send in complete reports to the foundation quarterly every 3 months. And that involves a financial report, a financial narrative, a narrative report on everybody's research actions, and that includes reports directly from each of the sub-awardees, information about the subs, and information about other metrics such as research outputs, papers, publications, fact sheets, presentations, etc. And so that reporting requirement does take up a significant amount of our time. Lexi and I are pretty much either writing a report from the previous period or responding to questions about the previous report, or preliminarily putting together information to get information for the next report. So that is a significant amount of our time. Lexi's going to talk a bit next about kind of tasks and how we divide them.
Thanks, Bridget. So I wanted to show you sort of what the normal CPC task distribution would be when a research admin is working with the project manager, and then I'm going to show you how Bridget and I specifically handle this one because it's significantly different. So normally a lot of the work falls under the research admin category. Specifically, we handle talking to the subcontracts, collecting materials from the subcontracts, communicating with OSP, for the award setup, also the sub-account team. So we're the intermediaries, and the project manager stays out of that. They communicate with us, we communicate with OSP. The admin handles making sure personnel effort shifts happen and handles paying invoices, and make sure that compliance with what's allowed to be on the budget and what reports have to go in. And the project manager primarily communicates with the project team, and sometimes they do communicate with the subcontracts as well, depending. And then we work together on budgeting and the reports and purchases that have to happen. Typically, the project manager will let me know, we need to attend this conference. Can you help us register for it? And then I would make that happen, usually using my purchasing card. And now, for me and Bridget, you can see there's a lot more in the both column. We work a lot more collaboratively, and this is so much bigger than almost all the other projects. It's the biggest one I handle, and it's one of the biggest at CPC. And so we've worked out a different way that works for us. For example, Bridget does almost all of the subcontract work, both in communicating with them, because it's such a massive amount of information and schedules. Like she mentioned, that there's 8, there's always a couple working on a new evaluation setup. So there's things I don't even see happening in the background because they have to present to the foundation to see if they can start a new subcontract work. And then she actually communicates with the OSP subcontract team directly, since she is so involved in the subcontracts and it's so much more. It made sense to us that rather than me trying to interpret and going back and forth, that it's much more efficient for us to take out the middle person, which is me. And I'm still involved in all that communication, and Bridget and I collaborate on the questions we have, and I make sure all the documentation is going in correctly, the budget revisions, the SIPs, or what will be the Sparks eventually. And then, you know, we both work on purchases. There's actually someone that works under Bridget who handles all the invoicing and purchasing orders and a lot of the travel because the project is so massive. And we always decide who's going to contact who, but we both have worked with the foundation. We both communicate with the PI. We do the reports very collaboratively and the budgeting very collaboratively as well. So it's a much more equal division of tasks, I'd say. And Bridget's going to talk about some of our tools that we use for that.
Yeah, so some of the tools that we use to succeed while managing, you know, this grant or other grants, you know, that Lexi works with. first, communication, communication, communication. I probably could just say that over and over and over, but consistent open communication between the research administrator and the project manager or the PI is essential. There are different forms that we use for different purposes, and also people have different preferences or skills at communicating. So sometimes it works best to find out what someone is, how they are good at communicating. I don't know about you, but one of our PIs is particularly difficult to read an email. So if you really want to understand the answers, or if you have questions that you need answers to, sometimes giving a call or popping in person is really the only way to actually get the answer to your question. But in general, we together use email, Teams, both chat and meetings, Zoom meetings, in-person visits, etc. Lexi and I, between each other, use various methods to communicate. And when I say regularly or consistently, I mean almost every day, at least 3 days a week. We're chatting on Teams about the more informal questions or the little bitty questions on a report that we're working on or a budget that we're working on. And then if there's a more formal question or something that we need to pull someone else in, whether it's the PI or OSP, we'll use email or set up a meeting to do that. We also consistently communicate or use Teams for file sharing so that we can both be using the same version or both accessing the same file. I am not the world's biggest Microsoft fan, but Teams and the file sharing purposes for it work excellently and have really improved, I think, the way that we are able to manage our documents for managing this particular grant. Regular meetings, virtual and or in person, setting up these things kind of in advance on a regular schedule can be really helpful, especially if you're either new to a role or it's a new project or it's a very intense time of work that needs to happen because everybody's calendars get busy. So just setting up a regular meeting to get used to that kind of opportunity for efficient decision-making and communication is very helpful. One other tool that Lexi and I are always doing is documenting what the action items or the action steps are for what needs to be done, who is going to do it, when is it due, and what's the next follow-up step, or when are we going to meet about it next. As Lexi just described, the way we have evolved to manage this particular project is different than how other projects, smaller projects, are managed at CPC. And so who is doing this step can be like an important thing to clarify. And so we usually go through these action steps or come up with what we need to do. While we're communicating, whether it's just stopping by someone's cube or someone's office, but sometimes we forget. And so we'll send a Teams chat like, I forgot, Lexi, am I doing this or are you? So following up on that, which just leads me to my next question or my next thing, which is ask questions. So there are always questions about anything like, did you know the PI wants to do this? Or would it be a problem if we approached something this way? I probably ask Lexi a question every day. She probably asks me a couple times a week, and we are constantly just asking questions about things. If anything's unclear, easiest way is to get your questions answered. One other thing that is not listed on here, but I remember that Lexi did it when she joined our team to be the research administrator, was that she asked if it was possible for her to pop in to join some of our team meetings or our lab meetings. So we do once a month lab presentations. And I think it was sometimes a little bit technical or focused on specific analyses that weren't as interesting, but it's a good opportunity to understand the work a bit better and know who is who, and to just understand how the team communicates as well. So other tools that we use are to be proactive. Lexi, can you go? Sorry. So we're always trying to be proactive, always trying to plan our calendar, keep our calendar updated well in advance. So as we mentioned, there are quarterly reports, and so we block time on our calendar to do the work that needs to be done for preparing all of those reports and consolidating all of the narrative reports or working through all of the questions about the financial reports, planning for other upcoming activities and communicating with whoever's necessary for those activities. So if that means you need to communicate something specifically to the PI or, to the research administrator or vice versa to the project manager or to the sub-awardees, communicating well in advance about upcoming activities and timelines and being realistic about the timelines with yourself and others. So plan for some delays, give yourself enough time to continuously complete everything. We all know that there are also other things that pop up in our job. This is not the only thing that Lexi works on. And so if we know there's something coming up where she's going to be very busy with something else, then we can all shift our timelines to work better together. As much as we would like to plan everything out in advance, because we are both planners, we still have to remain flexible because things are always changing. This may be policies or procedures or protocols that are changing all the time. I know in the past few years, there's been big changes to travel with Concur or per diems. And I know later in the symposium, they're going to be talking more about the changes to the subaward process from SIP to Spark. And so change is constant, be flexible and be aware that change is going to come. If you're able to approach problems like puzzles, that can be a great way to, try to figure out things together. And sometimes problems are just simply errors or mistakes that people make and they just need to be fixed. But more often, at least in our work within the research market, problems are more like puzzles that need creativity and teamwork to arrive at a solution that works for everyone. And that teamwork is just another good way to remember that we all essentially are on the same team and we are ultimately all working together to get this research completed, explore the science and provide this research information to the public in the end. So looking to the future, generally, we are always aiming for continuous improvement, always seeking improvements and specifically any ways to do our jobs more efficiently, streamlining tasks, automating things more particular or wherever possible, and working smarter, not harder. When we each worked at different roles in CPC before entering these particular positions. And when we moved into our positions, which wasn't at the exact same time, there was room for improvement in how things were organized or how statuses were tracked in different parts of either this project or another project. I'm sure that you all have experienced things where either you moved into a new position or started a new project and had to kind of create or set up these kinds of organizational systems. And so we decided, we kind of separately over time have evolved into this kind of organizational tracking system, which should be easy to use, clear to understand, accessible to anybody who might need to use it. And so these examples on the screen are really very, very bare bones options that we have done already, but we are aiming to continue improving things. So this is just a Excel file that lives in Teams that tracks the deliverable-based or the milestone-based payments for our sub-awardees, and it's accessible to myself, to Lexi, to the person who does our invoicing, and to the PIs who work with these particular subawardees. The main reason we created this is to avoid those status check emails that everybody gets all the time, like what's happening with this one, what happened with this one, where is the status? So everyone knows now that they can just look at the information there. And if it's not clear there, then they know who to go to next. Also, we use file sharing teams, kind of setting that up in a little bit more organized, standardized system so that everyone knows where to go for all these repeated reports we have to do all the time.
So Bridget and I are definitely organizational nerds for sure. We love it. We love tracking, we love documents. And one of the things that I share with everyone I talk to, whether they want to hear about it or not, is Notion, which a pre-doc introduced me to last year. It's an organizational tool. It's free. And as university employees, you get like the first sort of upgrade free. I don't have it on this computer, so I can't show you, but I use it for tracking my entire work life, like all the tasks I have going on. It allows you to do a table with statuses, and to-do lists and checklists, and, you know, sort it as kind of like a little bit like Excel, but user friendly, and it has fun colors and all that kind of stuff you can completely nerd out on or go super simple. But it's also set up as a team project feature where it's a little bit like Teams if you use that, but in my opinion, so much better and easier to use and more manipulative. And so Bridget and I have a goal of looking into that and how we can use that as a team so that everyone knows where everyone is in a particular task, like when we do our reports. She does this, then I do this, then we send it to OSP and we do that, and then it comes back and where is this part, so we can sort of have it all in one place as a large project and pull in other people needed. So that's a huge tool that we really haven't even explored the full possibilities of that yet, that we hope to do maybe in the upcoming new year. My team is finally at full capacity, and so my workload for other things will reduce a little bit and then give me some time to spend on this. So we're really excited about that. And we're constantly evolving our different ways of organizing and making sure everything is documented, and working on actually documenting how we've done reports or this, that, and the other, so that we don't constantly go, oh, we should have written that down. How did we do this 3 months ago? Like it's so easy to just be like, oh yeah, I'll get to that, or I'll remember that, and we don't. So trying to be nice to our future selves, as well as each other.
And as you know, Lexi was just saying, like writing down the lessons learned, we don't love spending all of our time on these reports, but it does provide us opportunities to make corrections as we go, or identify problem areas, or identify things that are areas of potential improvement. And as she said, writing things down when you learn your lessons, and not only writing them down, but writing them down in the place that you will find them later where you need them. So you know how in like your house, if you have a hard time remembering to take medication, or maybe you forget your keys to get into your work office or whatever, you might put a Post-it like in a very specific location that you're going to see it before you leave your house or before you finish brushing your teeth. We have started putting our lessons learned in the spots that we know we're going to see them. So if we get a question from the sponsor in Q1 report, then we add a comment into our draft for Q2 report, just to know that we are going to address that before we send it off. And lastly, but absolutely not least, sharing the lessons that you learn among your colleagues. Lexi works on a lot of other projects, so sometimes she will learn something about a different project that is applicable here, and so that's easy because she is doing them both, but she also communicates all the time with the other research administrators within the department. And sometimes our team will learn something new or helpful regarding how to, have an invoice process or how to find something in the system, and Melissa or I will pass that along to the rest of the CPC team. So sharing within your departments and then with other departments is, everyone is really grateful if you share any way to make their job easier. So always sharing both directions is great.
Yeah, and one thing we don't have on the slides that I want to touch on a little bit is that the whole program that Bridget's involved with is a huge group and a huge community, and they have meetings, but they also have like gatherings, which isn't necessarily common, but maybe more labs have, and they have been very inclusive, and they invite me to everything, and I'm always welcoming. And the fantastic thing about them being a food program is that they do like food contests, and I get to come and eat amazing food. And that's not a situation that's going to be true for every admin project collaboration, or, sometimes you're just working with a PI who maybe has a student or something, but it is really nice for me as a research admin to be fully involved. I know just about everyone, so all the names that I see getting paid, I pretty much have a face to go with all of them. And I know what's going on and they know what's going on with me. And it just makes for a very nice collaborative work environment. So I feel very welcome. And I'm not the first research admin to work with them. And I know that they've done that for most of them. And it's really appreciated. So we have a bit of a special relationship in that. It helps that we get along really well too. So it is unique, but it's helpful for sure. So with that, I've seen a couple questions come in. We'd be happy to answer as many questions as we can.
Great. Thank you all so much. That was wonderful. So we do have a few questions that I'm going to go ahead and read. One of them that I've seen a couple of times, if you can tell us what the name of the organizing software that you use and the program for the tracking purposes.
Yeah, so right now, mostly Teams and Excel. I would say Teams for file sharing, that has been a big thing that we are using the same versions. And then we often will save an archived version. Since Teams saves automatically, we keep different versions so we can go back also, so that when we send it to the PI, if they play around with it, we can go back in case something got messed up in one of the equations or something. CPC has a wonderful but complicated budget template for new proposals that can be easily messed up by anyone. And so that allows us to make sure that doesn't happen. But we hope Notion will hopefully be a big part of our future organization. Yeah, Bridget, do you have anything to add to that?
We have tried the task trackers within Teams, and it sometimes works well for some things and sometimes doesn't work as well for others. So that's the aim, to switch over to Notion, because Lexi's had really good success with that on her own. So now figuring out how to make that work for multiple people or for the team. So we're hoping that it will work well. I know several people, we had a couple meetings about the symposium, and I think Amanda was talking about using Notion. So I'm sure you all maybe have wonderful advice for using Notion here in the chat even.
Great, thank you. Another question that we have is, do you use a RACI matrix or other roles responsibility tool for each project that you work on together?
We don't have like a formalized like a matrix like that to do like who is responsible, who is accountable, consulted or informed. I would probably be a useful tool if we had done that to start with. But because I kind of took over this from another position, and then Lexi later took over that, we really didn't establish that in that way. But I can see that it would be an excellent way to divide the tasks, especially if you're coming from the very beginning. For sure.
Yeah, and handoff to, that's something that my team is working on, and Bridget and I are working on too, is having a former boss and I used to joke, if one of us wins the lottery and just decides to leave and drop everything, someone else can take it over without a ton of hassle. We don't want them to search for things. So that would be a good thing to have going, that we can update as we continue, just in case something happens, something good happens and one of us leaves very suddenly.
Great, thank you. So another question is, for the 3 aims in one of the early slides, do they have unique PIDs or do you track with cost codes?
They have PID. Yeah, so there's a prime PID that is usually sits empty, or we have if a subcontract, the extra subcontract funds sit there until it's time to spend them. And then each of the aims has a PID, and then as usual, the subcontracts. So the aims are called sub-accounts. So it says sub-account X, sub-account Y, sub-account Z, and then the sub-awards are underneath those with their own PIDs as well, like normal.
Great, thank you. Another question is, how do you split post-award duties?
Pretty much like we were talking about. I can go back to this. This project is mostly post-award. We put in proposals, but it sort of worked out with the foundation, so it's not a normal proposal process. Like if you're submitting something to NIH, for example, it's more of an ongoing collaborative thing, even though we have different award cycles. And it does feel very collaborative in a lot of ways, and we work together on the budget and compliance constantly. Bridget tells me, hey, this personnel needs to be split differently across these projects. There's other projects within the Global Food Research Program that I also manage, so I can see the whole big picture. And then I communicate with our HR person or the department if it's a faculty member. And Bridget does all of this stuff with the team, and then we come together. I've tried to split it up here, but it is such a collaborative process, and we tend to talk through everything together. I don't know if that answers the question more clearly or not. I would be so willing to chat with anyone one-on-one if they would like to, or email if there's something more specific you have questions on.
Great, thank you so much, Lexi. One of the last questions that we have is two-parter. So how often do you ask questions directly to OSP? And would you like increased communication back and forth? And then Bridget, this is specifically for you, and if you ever have contact with OSP, and if not, whether you would like to.
I am in pretty constant contact with OSP because I manage a lot of different projects right now. For this project specifically, not as much, because it's pretty well established. A lot of what happens is the subcontracts. But when it comes to the reports, I work closely with OSP on that, to make sure like they put together the financial report as they would normally do, but then we have to map it into the foundation's accounting lines, which are different than ours, and it doesn't always make sense. And so we work together on that mapping. And then Bridget and I put it into the foundation's horrible budget formations. They have their template that is weird and requires 5 different things. and then we send it back to OSP and they check it again. And sometimes there's multiple back and forth of like, oh, hey, I noticed this is weird. Things get rounded in the template, but OSP doesn't usually round. So like it can be a whole thing. So sometimes it's a lot of back and forth. But there isn't a ton of other communication. I think because it runs fairly smoothly, there's not a ton of post-award things that have to happen. And then Bridget communicates with the sub-award team quite a bit because they are foreign subs. There's communication issues. There's extra weird documents that have to be done that are hard when you are a native English speaker. I'm on all of those, but it's primarily hers. I'll let her talk about that more.
You pretty much covered it, but yeah, my main communication with or contact with OSP is via the sub-award or SIP portal, or just directly with OSP subs at UNC.edu, and Jessica finds answers to the questions that we have because there's always something weird going on. So I really appreciate being able to communicate directly with her about those or with that inbox and with them getting answers back to us. So that works out very well on our ends. Yes.
Great, thank you. Glad that we can help. All right, so that's the last question that I see. So if you do have any other questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A and we'll answer them.
And if anyone else has a magical tool to manage your projects that you would like to share with the rest of us, feel free to put that in the chat too, because we love to learn about things that we don't already know about.
So 2 more came in. One of them is, do you give access to the project manager to review the shadow accounting system?
Yeah, I'm not sure which shadow accounting. Oh, to view the personnel projections? Absolutely. Yes, I share that with her and the PI frequently. We actually meet with the PI, I don't know, maybe quarterly or more if something's changing. And he has a lot of input on the percentages. So we don't have a way for her to view it on her own at the moment because my team uses the Q Drive to save all that. So our team has full access. And that is something that we've talked about. We do share those files. We call them A files or account files. They're in Excel, but shifting to an internal program. We send quarterly reports to all the PIs so they all see that. And anytime they want to see it, we immediately give them updated access. We update them at least monthly. So it's not a secret at all. It is fully open to them. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Great,
thank you. And then someone asked, Notion was available and where is it available?
It's online. If you just Google Notion, I pull it up right now, but I think it's just like www.notion.com. It should come right up. But if you don't find it, shoot me an email and I'll happily share it with you.
I think if you set up a login using your university account, then you will get the upgrade or the higher version that Lexi was describing before.
And it's kind of an open source thing. So there's so many templates out there that you can use that people have shared. If you make one, you can share it with your team when they can share it with you, or make it, I mean, it's so much information out there. You can actually overwhelming, but I think someone posted in the Q&A the link. Thank you.
So another question came in about Notion and that it has an AI component and how you keep the necessary information secure, or if you use the bare minimum in the system.
I'd say I'm using the bare minimum at the moment. Maybe not quite bare minimum. I haven't used AI. I haven't seen a need for it. I think it's pretty new. And I don't keep any secure information in there. Like I wouldn't put the account files in there I don't have any salary information in there, nothing that UNC would frown upon, because I don't know if it's approved for that. So it's not so much a document saving area, it's more of like, here's the task that we're working on. So I don't know the confidentiality. It's most of my stuff is private, so no one can just go find it online. It's kind of like Teams. It's saved. It's your personal stuff. So unless you choose to share it out there, which so I think I have some things that is like, if I share a link to a specific person, they have access more to that template than my actual stuff, but it's not free out there.
So something to keep in mind about the confidentiality, when we do use new programs that may share information or ask for information, ITS data security can help look at that and to make sure that it's compliant with all of UNC's requirements as well.
It doesn't ask for like access to any of our stuff or anything like that.
So I don't see any other questions. If you do have other questions, like Lexi said, you can reach out to them directly. You can also submit any questions on the submit questions form on our website. Anything that you do submit will get to the presenters, and we'll have the answer in the presentation on the symposium website. And thank you all for attending, and thanks to our presenters. You did a wonderful job.